everybody, it's Emma. Welcome to It's Emma's World. I'm so glad you're here to join me today. We got a great guest coming up. His name is James Miller. He's been on before, and he has a brand new book out called Life Lessons. You are the expert on your life, a workbook. So we're going to be talking about that. But before we get into anything, please check out our website. It's www.itsemmasworld.com. And while you're there, you'll be able to see everything that is Emma's World. And I got a lot going on. Trust me, we have a lot of great guests that have come on. We have been talking about lots of different things. So if you've missed anything, just go to the archives there and you'll be able to catch up what's going on in my world. And also, we are not just here to talk about celebrities. If you have something that you want to talk about and you have a story of overcoming something amazing, taking yourself from like the next to nothing to where you are today, this is where we can actually help you. We want to get your story out there. Your story can inspire other people. So please go and write to us on there, sign us up, hit us up on social media, however you got to do it. Just make sure you get your story to us. We'd love to have you on. So without further ado, I have our good friend James on here. Welcome to the show, James. How you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a guest on your show. I am so honored to be here today.
I'm honored to have you. I mean, you're definitely a good friend of the station and me, and you've given me a lot of help over the years, and I'm always there to help people out. And it looks like you have a brand new book here to help people figure out their way through life a little bit easier and maybe manage some stress or anything else that they might have coming up in their lives. It's called Life Lessons. You are the expert on your life, a workbook. So tell me a little bit about what inspired this book.
Well, first off, thank you once again. So the book came about because when I first started Lifeology years ago, I kept thinking, well, what is the theme that I always hear? So I'm a psychotherapist. I've been in the field for 25 years. And I kept thinking, I'm hearing some recurrent things. And so once again, you can read as many self-help books as you want, fantastic books. But sometimes we get so overwhelmed because you're thinking, gosh, I have to learn something new. So when we think about this, if you think about your life, you've experienced all these emotions before. So life may be different, but the emotions we all experience are the same. So I thought, well, let me figure that out. How can people just be the expert in their life? So if I felt grief before, if I felt sadness before, if I felt any emotion, if I felt it before, what can I do to make sure that when I feel it again, I don't fall back into old patterns? And so that's why the book came about, is to really help people look at their expertise and to see what have I experienced these feelings before? What did I do that was healthy? What did I do that wasn't healthy?
Man, I'll tell you what, just by talking to you over these years, I didn't realize how patterns were so prominent in our lives. I mean, we would go and do something and it felt comfortable. So we did what we needed to do and it got us through, but sometimes it didn't get us the end result. So as opposed to sometimes changing that, we either stay in it or we do change it, but we fall back really quickly, especially if it gets a little bit more challenging. Yes. So what are some of the things that people can do to break these patterns and stay on that path as opposed to just turning around? To me, it's like, you're going to swim to China. You get to like 10 miles off the coast, turn around, go back. Makes no sense.
Exactly. When emotions are really overwhelming, sometimes you think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And that's a normal feeling. There's a first response and a second response. The first response is that, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. The second response is when we have more the mindfulness aspect of, okay, have I been here before? So once again, the situation may be different, but the emotion is the same. So when you get to that second response, simply ask yourself, when did I feel this emotion before? What did I do that worked? And what did I do that didn't work to help me through it? Because if you try to reinvent the wheel when you're already overwhelmed, it's going to be too difficult. So you simply have to reflect on a previous event. And that allows you to say, okay, well, I did X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z was helpful for me. It got me to the next step. And that next step allowed me to become more thoughtful and be able to do something and to look at my options as opposed to the feelings of, oh my gosh, I just can't do this. So that's the one thing people can do.
Now, what about it's a workbook. So obviously you have step-by-step little challenges for people to try to implement into their own lives. How does this book work?
Great question. So just like other workbooks, this one's a little bit different because after each chapter, I give prompts, in other words, questions about how they've experienced these situations before. What was the time in their life they experienced it? And then I walk them through the events of, well, what did you do to get through it? What did you do that did not get through it? So I give really concise prompts of how people can can look at previous events, see how it affects them currently, and with the information that I give them in each chapter, and they're pretty short chapters, it allows them to kind of consolidate it and put it all together to say, this is a pattern, or this is something I can try that's new, or consolidate it so it's all working together in concert so that once again, they don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that's why it's a little bit different.
So this book, though, is pretty neat because, I mean, we have so many different aspects that we could be troubled with, relationships.
Yes.
It could be death. It could be our health, our business, anything. How did you tailor this book to literally incorporate everything, but yet still it still be vague enough that it would incorporate everything and not just stick to just, okay, a chapter about love, a chapter about this, or a chapter about that?
Well, when I started Lifeology, oh my gosh, 8 years ago from now, I really thought about this. I have 185 YouTube episodes that I did. And then I have 400 radio episodes. And so each of my episodes created a little mini lesson that I would teach. And so when I really looked at all of that data, I thought, okay, well, let me just conceptualize that and put it into different categories, because we all experience many things. But if it was too concise or too niched, in other words, if it's only a book on relationships, only a book on communications, that's wonderful. But the reality is we are so expressive and so expansive in life that it is important to look at as many factors as possible. So that's why I broke it down into 9 different categories to help people when they're struggling to say, okay, this is the category that makes sense to me right now. Let me read that. And then they can read all the chapters that are inside of that category.
Okay. Now, I know a lot of the times it's always easier said than done. We've said this before to people. I'm sure I've said it to many people. You've said it to many people. But sometimes you got to walk the walk to talk the talk. Have you implemented these same strategies into your own life?
That is a fantastic question. It's so funny. There's sometimes when I listen to my shows or watch myself on TV, and I laugh because I'm like, oh my God, that's great insight. And I think, oh my gosh, James, that's you teach it. But it is true. I have to learn that myself. There's been many times in my life when I have been blindsided by things like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And I reflect on the times, same things that I teach my readers, is when did I feel this emotion before? Because if I can immediately go back to that, I can bypass the first response of, oh my gosh, to right to the problem solving. So I can feel the grief, but I know what the plan is. So I can feel the grief concurrently, or in other words, at the same time as coming up with a plan. So yes, I definitely use these, these life lessons that I teach. And it can be difficult at times, but when you practice it more and more, you'll find that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you will be able to move to the next level of your life. And you're in control of what happens next.
So it's like, oh my God, that guy is a freaking genius. All right, it's me.
I mean, I don't want to say that, but
it's me. So
hysterical.
How can we be how can we control our own lives? I mean, sometimes it's easier to listen to other people and do it, but sometimes we don't listen to them, but we listen to ourselves more. So how do we convince ourselves that this is what we need to do?
A lot of times, and like I said at the very beginning of this, it's important to reflect on all throughout the day. If you can be aware of what you're feeling in the moment, just simply say, well, have I felt this before? Because when life does hit us, and it does, sometimes it can be too overwhelming to kind of figure that out. So all throughout the day, when you can just check in with yourself and say, what am I feeling? When have I felt this before? Am I doing the healthy thing that I've done in the past to help me get through this? Or if it's an emotion you really like, am I still doing the things that are healthy to make this emotion continue or to last? So just small little check-ins throughout the day allows a person to be mindful of what is the healthy response for them in each event that they experience.
You know, that's really good. That is really good advice. And I know as a psychotherapist yourself, you've probably heard just about everything. You know, and you've gone through a gamut of emotions for people. How do you manage your emotions after talking to somebody that's really tough, that was really hard to hear, or you feel their struggle? Because you got to have some type of empathy into it. You got to be kind of empathic to be in the field that you're in. So how do you cleanse yourself and don't let that interfere in your life?
That is, once again, a fantastic question. I remember years ago, I was in session and I just had a really bad breakup. And I kid you not, I had 10 patients that day. Every single patient had a relationship problem. They were breaking up, they were divorced. I mean, it was like the worst thing that I could hear in that moment. And it's not funny, but in that moment, I'd have to say, all right, James, this is not about you. This is about them. And you have to create those boundaries. But when I would hear what they would say, my self-talk was very important. James, you are hurting, but you're going to be okay. James, what you're experiencing right now will not last forever. And that's one of the chapters I talk about is emotional forecasting, which I think is the 5th chapter. Emotional forecasting is you take a snapshot of your life right now. And in that you say, this is how my life will always be. And that's one of the most painful things we can do, because if we're feeling despair, then that despair is going to be everything. So when you can remind yourself that what I'm feeling right now will end. It may not feel like it, but it will end. And that's when you reflect on other times when you've experienced, for example, grief. And if you've experienced grief before, it took you some time to get through it, but you got through it. So the recognition that what you're feeling right now, so if I'm listening to a patient, what they're experiencing, what I'm experiencing, if I'm pulling something from them, that allows me to say, this is about them, but I know what I'm feeling, if it's relevant to my life, is not going to last forever. And that's one of the most important things, because that gives you hope, and hope always allows for your future to be the way you want it to be.
I think through anything in life, we have to have certain qualities, to do things. Some of us lack in certain things. Some of us excel in the things that I lack. So sometimes it's good to have a partner or something like that, or a friend that can balance you out. However, that's not always the case. So in order to accomplish what we need to do, we need to sometimes look at our strengths and our weaknesses. Now, how do we realize that we have a weakness, and how will this book help us enhance that weakness and use what we're lacking at to accomplish what we want to accomplish?
A lot of times you'll find that with whatever your self-talk is. So for example, if you're talking to me right now, if I hear something if I'm talking to myself, so in other words, I'm saying, gosh, Emma's right, I don't know if I can do this. If you were to say that and I were to believe that self-talk then determines how far I'm going to go in this conversation, or my self-worth, or my value. So it's really important to recognize what you're thinking and be aware of it. So sometimes I simply will just talk aloud what I'm thinking, because when I hear it aloud, then I could think, well, that doesn't make sense. Or why do I think that? So the recognition that our self-talk continually whispers, if you will, to us, our value and our worth. So if you recognize that your self-talk is not healthy, or you recognize there's a disconnect between someone else, meaning you have a conversation with them and all of a sudden one of you gets upset, probably you used a thinking error. So in the chapters, or excuse me, one of the chapters in the book talks about thinking errors. Thinking errors are essentially like glasses or lenses that we use that skew what happens. So if you wear sunglasses, it changes the environment. Same type of thing with a thinking error. Anytime someone experiences a negative interaction, one of you use one of the 15 common thinking errors. So the right way to recognize one of your deficits or areas you're working on is to say, where am I struggling? What am I struggling with? Is my communication? Is it my relationships? Is it my trust? Whatever it might be. When you can recognize where that slight disconnect is, that's where you know where there's a blind spot or a weakness that you can work on.
Now, this might seem kind of the same thing, maybe the same answer, maybe not. I don't know, but I'm going to take a shot at it. Now, for the last 20 years, I've been in the arts and entertainment industry. That I run my own radio station, but I started out with photography. And I would go into contests and I would put out my stuff there. And I started realizing that I didn't get the opportunities that I could have had to promote it better because of my name. And then I see other people that have been able to, they're extremely talented, but they seem to get in their own way. They build that wall up. And I don't know if it's because they're scared to succeed, or they keep thinking that I don't deserve this. Everybody's going to be so much better than I am. Why am I even bothering? So we build up that wall. Now, on the other side of that, we can't get over that wall until we get out of our own way.
Correct.
Does this book help us recognize that we are our own wall, and we are our own obstacle that we have to overcome? And sometimes it was right there in front of our face the whole time. We just didn't see it.
Exactly. And that's, once again, you have so many good questions. Yes, this book what are the categories? Let me just read through the 9 categories right now so people can, listening and watching this, will know what they are. So one of the 9 categories is when you're when your emotions overwhelm you, improving your communication, blindsided by life, improving your relationships, moving on with your life lessons, identifying self-sabotage, creating your future, and tackling the holidays. So yes, to answer your question, the identifying self-sabotage is, I believe there's 3 or 4 chapters that are specifically about that. When life happens, what do you do that gets in the way? What are the things you continually do, whatever those habits and behaviors are, that you automatically do that will stop you from being able to accomplish your goals? And unfortunately, that happens with many people, but there are ways around it. So definitely looking at that category will help you overcome those.
Now, if you're not having anything going on that you can recognize in your life, is it still okay to like just use this to just keep yourself abreast of what might be happening so that way you can recognize things, or you may realize that something was going on that was affecting other things, you just didn't even think about it?
Well, the great thing about this book is you can actually read it in 2 ways. You can read it just like a normal book from the beginning to the end. There are 52 chapters, really short chapters. So people who don't like to read that much, 52 chapters is pretty easy to read. Or you can read it, or you can use it as a workbook. So you actually, after each chapter, you can take some time, fill out what the prompts are, maybe wait a week or wait as long as you want, then do the next chapter. So if you are struggling in the moment, simply find the chapter or the category with all the chapters in it that is specific for you in the moment. So yes, you could read it 2 ways, front to back like a normal book, or read it specifically for whatever you need in that moment.
And I think this will probably be the last question before we go to our break here. But I hear people say all the time, well, you know what, I don't need none of this, because I don't have a psychological problem, or I don't, whatever they come up with something as an excuse. But so, talking to a therapist or talking to a psychiatrist or talking to a psychotherapist does not necessarily mean that you're mentally insane, or that you have these overwhelming urges to do something bad or hurt yourself or whatever. Sometimes it can be used, I believe, just to help you see things that you didn't see before. So that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a problem. Is it good to just kind of talk to somebody, have somebody there like you, or maybe even a friend that you can bounce this stuff off of? Because I think we tend to put up a stereotype about seeing a therapist, but I don't think it's as bad as everybody thinks it is.
I get a lot of questions like that as well. As most people, when I first was in private practice full time, people think, oh, I just have to come to James because I'm really struggling. And yes, that is very important. But I have many clients I can remember in the past when I was doing this full time, very high functioning CEOs doing really, really well. And they would come to see me when they were doing well because I just wanted to see if there are any blind spots. So yes, you don't have to have a mental disorder or any mental struggles. You just simply go and talk to someone to see how well you're doing. Because when you can validate that, yes, I'm doing really well, then that allows you to be confident in what's happening in life and to know that you are doing the healthy things that you need to do. So yes, you do not have to have any mental problems at all to come talk to someone like me.
So before we go to our break, tell everybody where they can find the book and when's it coming out.
The pre-sales for the book are between May 31st and June 13th. You can pre-sale or purchase it rather on Amazon.com. After June 14th, you can purchase it in your favorite bookstore, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, anywhere books are sold. And simply go to jamesmillerlifeology.com to learn more information about life lessons.
Now you have a great life so far. I mean, I've got to see some of the fun things that you've done and talk to you about that. You're a psychotherapist. So we got a lot to talk about when we come back. You have a radio show. We're going to get in one-on-one with James here. We're going to have a little bit more fun. He's so much more than just this book. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. So we will be right back after this. Don't go anywhere. All right, guys, we are back and we have James on the line. We just got done talking about his book, and it's a fascinating book. But like I said, he's also got a lot of cool things that he's done in his life, things that he's accomplished. He's got a radio show, a television show, and so much more in the works. So we're going to talk to him about this now. So let's kind of talk to you, James, about how you got into being a psychotherapist in the first place, and how did that lead to your radio show, Lifeology?
Well, thank you. Once again, thank you for letting me be a guest in your show. The story is a little deep. When I first told it on air, I think maybe 6 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm telling something about myself. Because usually as a psychotherapist, you don't really divulge a lot of information because we have so many boundaries. However, when I started Lifeology, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something different. So my story, how I got into psychotherapy, to answer your question, was when I was 17 years old. I was really struggling with depression. There was a lot happening in my life and I just didn't know what to do. So I was actually put into a hospital for a few days. And while I was there in the hospital, I was like, "Oh, I can't stand this." And I didn't know anything about psychology, but I would thought, well, if I can help anybody, I'm going to help them. So fast forward 4 years later, I graduate with my undergrad in psychology, and I worked as a psychiatric or as a psych tech in a staffing agency, and they staffed me at the same hospital I was when I was in the hospital at 17 years old. So here I am, fast forward years later, and I'm in that same unit with my keys. I went into the room that I was in 4 years prior to that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I actually fulfilled what I wanted to do. And it was such a really powerful moment, Emma, because that's how we know what we really believe. And so I didn't realize, and I actually had forgotten about that until I walked into the room. But like I said, it was really powerful. And after that, I just found that I had a natural propensity or natural talent for people just come talk to me about their problems. And at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing, even though I had an undergrad degree. But then I went ahead and graduated from my grad school and then went on to my doctorate. And that was something I really focused on with my private practice for, I think, 13, 14 years at that time. And I wasn't feeling fulfilled in my own life. So I was doing wonderful in the psychotherapy world, had a lot of accolades, was really well known. But I thought, well, what do I want to do beyond this? And so I thought, you know what? How would I do this? And so I kind of thought about the three different things I'm good at. So in psychotherapy, you interview people all the time, if you think about it that way. So I interview people, talk a lot. And when I was younger, I did a lot of television and movies, etc. So I thought, okay, well, I like the entertainment world. So I found out how all three of those things worked together, and that's how I started Lifeology. So I closed my practice, came down to Palm Beach, Florida in 2015, and for 6 months, every single day, I did a YouTube episode because I wanted to practice my craft again. So for 6 months, every single day, I created one of these little mini lessons, and I worked on how to speak, how to do the production, etc. And so that's how Lifeology started. And then I was on a podcast for maybe, I think I had like 30 some episodes. And after that, I met you and I was on AM/FM 247 and I started in 2016, I think. And so now, as of this date, I have 400 episodes. And so I am so happy with the reach that Lifeology has. And obviously for you as well, for allowing me to be on your program as well.
Oh, you're welcome. And so it started as a podcast, turned into a full-blown show. I mean,
Yes.
that's what's so amazing. Like I said, I think we need to take more chances and more things and try more things in life because you never know what they're going to lead to. Yeah, we may fail at it, but I don't believe that the failure is truly a failure. I think it was a bad attempt, and you can always do it better next time. So we learn from these mistakes. I think the only regret we have in life, the only failure we have in life is regret because it's too late to change it for some God only knows reason, whatever that may be. But what did you want to do before you got into psychology?
Great question. Oh, well, a couple things actually. So when I was a kid, I was on stage at 3 years old. So I was a professional singer, and I think the largest venue I sang at was 55,000 people. So as a little kid, I was in front of a lot of people. I mean, all the way up until I was 15, 16. I was travel the world singing. And that's what I wanted to do. So I'm very comfortable on stage. In fact, I'm probably more comfortable on stage than I am in other times. So that's what I wanted to do. But then when I started undergrad, I wanted to become a geneticist. I always wanted to learn just more about the body. And just, if I could, I wanted to cure cancer. But when I went to university, got a huge music scholarship. And then from there, I transitioned to music. And then the whole psychology thing came up. So psychology and Spanish with a music minor. So, however, once I graduated undergrad, I had the opportunity to go to film school and go to LA. And I mean, all these things was an opportunity. I just finished a movie that was, I watched it years later. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's pretty silly. Anyway, so to see all that, I had the opportunity to do that. And I thought, well, I could do this, but I got a little scared. And I thought, well, I know a lot of actors who haven't done well. So what can I do just to fall back on? And I'll come back to it later. So I decided to go to graduate school, get my master's and my license for psychotherapy. And I thought, well, I'll come back to that later. I did not come back to it later. So now 15, 25 years later, here I am coming back to it, circling back. And now I'm back in the entertainment world. So a lot of things, just like many people listening, we had a lot of ideas of what we wanted to do. And I was finally able to settle into what I'm doing today.
See, I love that because you're proving that it's never too late as long as you have that ambition. I always wanted to be in acting too. It's something I've always wanted to be a part of. I love entertaining people, and I kept saying the same thing. I'm not pretty enough.
Mhm.
I'm not capable enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. And I got in my own way. And the art was great, and I still love the art. I'm finally able to get back into that too. So I hope that I could follow in your footsteps and follow those dreams that I want to have. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Congratulations. And it's fun to hear these stories. But you're also a composer, and I've heard some of your
Yeah.
work. It's really good. How did you get
Thank
into
you.
composing?
So when I was in, gosh, I think I was in third grade. In fact, when I started playing the piano, that's what I learned. How my left for my right hand was the L was for my left, the lower L. But yeah, that's how I started. And so I played a lot, and I hated music, like I'm sure many people. I hated taking my piano lessons, and so I would want to go play or go read a book. And so we didn't have a piano at home. We had one of those organs that had the two, the two. The two keys there. And so the two boards rather. And so I had to practice that way. But I played over and over, and I started composing when I was in grade 9 or ninth grade. And from there, it just, somewhat, I was obviously really bad, but I just practiced over time. And there was a time that I actually didn't compose or play my piano for about 10 years. I think about 25 until 35. I took a break from it. And the reality is when I think back on that, Emma, I don't really know why, but for whatever reason, I did. And then I had a moment in my life when I was like, I just want to give in fact, this is the moment when I thought I want to do something different. I'm over this. And so that's when I started to think, well, what can I do? So I sat down one day, closed my eyes, and just played. And I hadn't done that in years. And so all this emotion came out. And so when I started writing again, it just became natural. So I write in a very extemporaneous way. Fancy SAT word that basically says it just comes out and I just play it. Now I've had years of music lessons and music theory, so that makes it a little easier for me because I know the theory of it. So as I feel it and I can play, it just makes sense for me. So I'm actually working on my third album right now. The first album is Consolation. The second album is Restoration. And the third album is called Self-Acceptance. So I actually write with a lot of psychology, with a lot of neurology, so the music actually affects a person's body. So that's essentially how I compose my music.
That's amazing. I mean, I can't play an instrument to save my life. I tried the saxophone one time, and I had such a bad experience. I was kicked out at the age of 10, and I'm walking
No.
home in like December in Connecticut, snow and everything, and he wouldn't let me call my mom. So I walked home, and he said that you haven't been practicing. It was my fifth freaking,
Oh my gosh. Oh goodness.
class with him, and I'm like, wow, okay. So he got really upset with me, and I think that kind of destroyed my passion for playing music. But if I had to
I'm
pick up
sure.
anything again, I would say it would be a saxophone or a bass guitar. Those are really cool. So I would probably play that. So, I love when people can put together dance or music or anything
Yeah.
like that, because it's something I just never had the passion to do, but I so appreciate the end results, if you know what I mean.
Yes, it really is. I mean, those are great. Those are great instruments. I remember when I was in undergrad, I had to play all the different types. So I played the bass, or excuse me, I played the brass, I played the strings. So all the different types we had to learn. In fact, after university, a couple years ago, actually, quite a bit after university, I picked up the cello, and I was like, I've always wanted to play the cello. So I rented a cello, got cello lessons, and it's an incredible instrument. So that's one thing I think people don't have to hear you play, but to try something new in the safety of your own home it was a wonderful experience that I highly recommend.
I'll tell you, I'm going to probably get in trouble for this, but you know what? It's my own show. I don't give a damn.
All right.
So, anyways, one of the things that I've always wanted to do was play the oboe. And I've been
Uh-huh.
told that I have a good mouth and it can do
Uh-huh.
some great
Yeah.
things with my lips, but I could never make the oboe work.
And that's a hard one because it's a double reed. So if you do that, the people who can do that, it's really difficult because normally just with one reed, so one wooden reed, but then when you have two reeds together, they have to vibrate. So it definitely is a really hard instrument. So if you can do that, you're really good.
Guess I need to like heighten up my technique or
There you go,
something.
right? That's funny.
Well, James, this has been a lot of fun. One thing before we go, what does James Miller do when he's not doing his work in psychotherapy, not writing a book, not doing lifeology, what do you find fun and how do you relax?
That is a great question. It's a lot of people think it's, it's whatever, but I like a lot of physical fitness, and I don't go for how I look. I go because that actually really helps me. When I'm no different than anybody else. When I'm stressed out, I need something. So I don't necessarily mean the gym, but just doing something physical. So paddleball, volleyball, anything that I can do outside, I really enjoy. So more than likely, you'll see me outside at the beach doing something down here in Miami. But yeah, anything active outside was where you will find me.
Well, James, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great talk. I really enjoyed talking with you about your book. I wish you all the best for it. Tell everybody where they can find your book, Lifeology, anything else about you, social media, anything else you want to promote.
Well, first, once again, thank you so much, Emma. I truly appreciate everything that you've done for me. So, yeah, so if people want to learn more about me, simply go to jamesmillerlifeology.com and you can learn more about the book. And once the book launches June 14th, anytime after that, you can purchase it in your favorite bookstore, either Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, any other place. And if you would like to reach out to me, simply reach out to me on Instagram at jamesmillerlifeology. Love to hear from you all. I'll always respond to you. Thanks again, Emma. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And Jane and guys, this is the end of the show. We are running out of time. I can't believe it's been 30 minutes already. I really enjoyed your company with us today. I really hope that you enjoyed James and learned something from it. I hope you go check out his book. And I hope that you will always strive to be your best, because you can do it. We just got to get out of our own way a lot of the times and believe in yourself. Just because it's something new doesn't mean it's not something you're going to be you're not going to be bad at. You might actually find that it's something you enjoy and want to continue to pursue. And remember, who cares what anybody else thinks? As long as you like it, that's all that matters. So until next time, guys, you can find us on the same time, same channel. We would love to see you back again. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will be back again next week. So until then, have a great week. Bye.
Like, OMG, you were on TV and junk.